how do you get into the right mindset going into your busiest and most stressful environments?
I try to find the flow state, right? Like all of us do. And that has different meanings for different people. But what's, I think, universal about it is that's a great place to operate from, whatever it is you're doing, especially something that involves a performance. And for me, the flow state is what I call relaxed intensity. And you can't do it without being relaxed. You can't be nervous and uptight and do this really well. But you also have to be focused. And that, to me, comes from the intensity. So the relaxed intensity for me sort of is flow state and the sweet spot between boredom and anxiety.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Borelli, and you are tuned into the Sport of Business podcast. A few years ago, I started my business, Cuts Clothing, from my parents' basement in Washington. Leading a startup has its perks. One of them is connecting with like-minded individuals. On this podcast, you'll hear from some of the people I've gotten close with along the way. Get their takes on trends, business, and current events. And for future founders out there, hopefully you'll take something home that you can apply to your brand. This is the Sport of Business. Let's dive in. Welcome to episode 7 for the Sport of Business podcast, hosted by Stephen Borelli, the founder and CEO of Cuts. Today, we have a very special guest, someone I'm super pumped to meet and talk to. Chris Fowler has been one of ESPN's most successful analysts and events hosts over the years, College GameDay, and now host of his own podcast called Fowler, Who You Got. Chris, how you doing? Welcome to the pod.
Outstanding, guys. Looking forward to this. I'm a big fan of the brand, as we'll get into, but let's get into some stuff. Look forward to it.
Yeah. So this is Stephen. This is Sean. He's our director of ops, our resident college football specialist in the office. Definitely the person who knows more about college sports than anyone else here. So we're excited to talk to you. So yeah, we always like to start super open-ended and kind of how you got your start in with ESPN and what you're doing now.
Well, I'm living the dream because I want to do this job since I'm 10 years old. My grandmother was who got me into sports. She was a phenomenal sports fan back in the Chicago area. I grew up in Northern Illinois, outside of the city, and get dropped off at my grandparents' house on the weekend. They'd have NFL football on the TV, M&Ms on the table. She'd be having Cubs games on a transistor radio on a folding chair in her backyard of Rockford, Illinois, when I was a little kid. If you remember what a baseball scorebook is, you got to be old enough to know what that is. But she would score every game. She was just absolutely passionate fan. And listening to games on the radio, mostly with her, made me think, like, what could be a better job than that? Like describing live sports to an audience that was as fired up about it as you were. And so since I'm 10, I wanted to do this job, and I've done every little extracurricular activity and odd job I could think of in high school and college to build a skill set, make contacts, give up a lot of social life at CU Boulder in order to, hopefully hone my skills, and got to ESPN really young. Back, by the way, when ESPN was not what it is now. ESPN, 1986, when I got hired, was 7 years old. Wasn't the worldwide leader in anything. I was stoked to have the job. It was a very unconventional choice to go with ESPN over, if you could believe it. This shows you how different things were. Over a local station to go read scores somewhere. Nothing wrong with that, but that was the conventional path that everybody who advised me in college told me to do. And here was this cable network offering me a high school sports show called Scholastic Sports America. I thought maybe I was going to get hired for SportsCenter. They had other ideas. I looked 11 years old, so there's no way they're going to put me in SportsCenter at that point, even in 1986 at ESPN. And so I did this high school sports show against the better judgment of a lot of people who meant well, but would have guided me in a terrible direction had I said no to ESPN. And from there, one employer for like 36 years now, which is almost inconceivable in this business. A lot of different things within those 3.5 decades, but to have one employer have that kind of stability, be able to grow along with the company has been really cool. And now, after some navigating and some other unusual choices while I was at ESPN, I ended up getting to do my two favorite sports, which are college football and tennis. And we have championship events in both sports. So life is good, guys. I mean, what can I tell you? I love what I do. Gratitude is something I practice authentically each and every day because of, the professional life I've had. And that's just a part of what I do. I don't think I'm married to my job, but when I'm at my job, I certainly love it.
That's incredible. What at that time when you were choosing between the local station and joining ESPN, what was it? Was there something that you could feel in your gut, or some type of inclination like, oh, I need to go with ESPN over maybe the more accredited at the time of the local station?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is the key to life, I think, but it's certainly the key to professional life, is having the inner voice come through to guide you in a certain direction, even if it's a direction that others say you shouldn't do. Mm-hmm. And the simple fact was ESPN seemed more fun. Isn't that a crazy reason for choosing your first job? It just seemed more enjoyable, more challenging in a way. It wasn't live TV. I wasn't broadcasting events. It was a magazine show where I was dressed in T-shirts, unfortunately, before cuts existed, because they didn't fit like this. But I was just bopping around covering high school athletes in all 50 states and a few foreign countries for a couple of years at ESPN, and learning how to be in front of a camera, learning how to write stories, learning how to sit with an editor and choose shots. It was everything. It was like a 3-man little unit doing this show. And yeah, that was really unconventional, but it was great growth. Mm-hmm. And it was just a voice that said, hey, go do this. And then I talk to a lot of young people, some who want to get in this business and most who don't, and just talk about clearing away the static and the clutter in your life, including meeting other people who love you, and just being able to let that inner voice and that gut, as you called it, come through. And that has always been my guide.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you picked a rocket ship. Of
it was a good stock to buy in '86. You're right about that.
That's amazing. So how did you go from, not on live TV to all the way to College GameDay and doing championship games and doing the biggest sporting events? Like, what was that grind like, and how many years did it take you to kind of get to those premier events?
Yeah, grind is the right word. I mean, there's no overnight stuff. Everybody thinks you kind of land there. I did have some breaks along the way. I got to ESPN really young, and because I put together a resume tape in my college apartment against a wall as boring as this white wall here, and got on the air in Denver right out of school, which was a top 20 market, not doing big important stuff for the sports department, but doing the kind of features nobody else wanted to do. I wasn't covering the Broncos or the Nuggets, but I was covering regattas or high school sports or CU football when they were terrible and nobody wanted to do it. So just for that little resume tape, I got to a top 20 market. ESPN found me there. And that was an enormous break. Then once you get to a big company, it has lots of opportunities. Again, it's just navigating from one spot to another without really trying to get to a destination. I'm also a big believer in directions and not destinations. And that runs counter to what some people smarter than me might say about mapping out a career or progressing in business. I never had goals in mind like what I'm doing. I really didn't. I just wanted to sort of grow and improve, and given a chance, make the best choice I could. So College GameDay, by the way, wasn't a job anybody wanted in 1990 when I took over. The show had been around for a couple of years. It was a half hour in the studio leading into a bunch of games that nobody watched. Yeah. And had no profile. So I didn't beat out a bunch of qualified candidates to get the gig. There wasn't that big a demand for it. But we made something of it. And I don't mind talking about the show. I left it, like 8 years ago now, but it was something that you get a chance to do maybe once in a career if you're lucky, which is build something, right? Brick by brick, start it, nurture it, grow it with a core group of people and see it become something that really connects with people. So it's a parallel to your brand and lots of other companies, but in TV, you rarely get a chance to do that, right? Because you're inheriting a seat that somebody else had. You're inheriting an established show. And to be able to build GameDay to a thing that eventually got on the road in front of students and made an impact and was so gratifying. It was a nice round 25 years doing it. Wow. But that only happens if you listen to your gut, man. If you make those choices that put yourself in position to do that. I won't bore you, but there's a few other things that happen there. If I'd taken path A and not path B, I'd have never landed at Game Day. Would never be doing what I'm doing now. But I'm grateful that I sort of was able to, choose the right path when I was lucky enough to have options.
And I love that that story. You made it something that wasn't there before. And sometimes when your head's down and you're focused on just doing the small tasks right, and you're having fun with it, it can blossom into this incredible, 25-year thing. And that definitely happened. I mean, I know me and Sean, we were in college during the heyday of Game Day, and it just looked like you guys were just having so much fun with each other on there. And that's what made the show so much better than a lot of the other college shows. And I don't even think there's a fair second. There's no one in second place. It's just College Game Day. You guys were so far above anyone else. And I think it's just the relationships you guys built on there.
Yeah, that's right. It was authenticity. People ask me in a word, what is it? Authenticity. The chemistry was authentic. We loved each other. We loved the sport, and we felt the same way about it. And there's nowhere else we wanted to be on a Saturday morning, but right there on a campus, talking about a big game. So like a lot of successful brands like yours, authenticity is really, it can't be faked. Your customers, in our case, the viewers, can see right through inauthentic behavior. And so that's really what it was all about for us. And we never, ever foresaw some huge growth curve. Like people say, when did you know? We never knew. We were just enjoying week by week, trying to grow and get better. Show goes from 30 minutes to 60 minutes to 90 minutes to 2 hours to 3 hours. By the end, it was this monstrosity that was like, it's like a C-130. You're trying to just keep it, stable and land it. But along the way, it was just about the experiences we had more than ratings or trying to win awards. That stuff really came because the core group just appreciated each other and loved what we were doing.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable, and a lot of times it's difficult to see that when you're in it. I mean, we feel that too. Yep. Where sometimes we gotta take a pause and look at what we're actually doing, and that's certainly a testament to what you guys did at Game Day. It was visible when it was happening, but I can imagine how being in it, being a part of it, you don't necessarily see the impact that you're having, but that growth week over week, year over year was certainly evident, in that chemistry that you guys had and still have. Today you and Herb Street on Saturday Night Football is a testament to the teamwork, the authenticity, the appreciation for what you're doing, and a lot of those we share here at Cuts.
You say 27 years together. That's how many fall Saturday seasons Kirk and I have worked together since '96. I mean, that doesn't even seem real. I mean, the players we're talking about on the field are like 6-7 years younger than that broadcast partnership is. Isn't that wild? But I mean, people like the kids we cover can't even conceive of that. Like, we started working together on Saturday mornings on college football like 7 years before you were born, and they can't even comprehend that. Sometimes it blows my mind still.
Yeah, that's fun.
Me and Sean, we're only 6 years into it, but we've never, being 9 figures now and having 50 employees and growing to 100 this year. It was always just like, hey, let's just win tomorrow. And we didn't, we always say the dream was to be where we are now, just to have a staff of employees and get work in a WeWork and then have our own office. So a lot of times it's just about I love what you mentioned. It's not always a destination. It's the daily direction of what can be more.
And if you guys didn't like that, if you don't like that, it's really a problem. Like I just tell people, if you get into this business or any business, and you're thinking about how much money can I make? What in my business, people want to be famous. Mm-hmm. A lot of them will get into this. And I think, that's really misguided, because you got to love the grind. You have to love the process. I mean, I sit here at like 1, 2 in the morning studying my charts the week of a game day. I was up till 2, 3 in the morning in my hotel room to get 4 hours sleep. And it didn't seem like a sacrifice. It was what I love to do, because at that point you realize how privileged you are to have that position, and you are pretty damn driven to meet your own standard. Now, I want to get you guys' thoughts on the topic later on. We can hit it whenever you want, but just the idea of competition, because that's what business is about, right? You guys are in competition with other companies. And I just did something on Instagram where I was sort of revealed that how uncompetitive I am as a person, and how I don't think it's essential to be successful. being really hyper competitive. But that might not be true in business. It's true in what I do. I just have always felt like I'm going to be harder to please than anybody out there. So I don't really care. You got to care what your bosses think to some degree, but I don't really care what critics think or random people think or whatever. I mean, your customers are important, but if you're meeting your own standard, that's usually going to be good enough for just about anybody else, because they don't care nearly as much about it as I do what I do. So,
and I think for us, we're definitely competitive people in here in a way that we want to deliver better results to our customers than the next company. But where I agree with you is we want to focus on who we are as a business, and I think it's easy for businesses to say, hey, let's go do this to be better competition than this other brand, and then you end up changing who you are. And I think that's where competition can get you in a bad, can veer you in the wrong direction. And so, we say this all the time, is we make clothes for the sport of business, guys like me and you that are on the road, that want a professional shirt that looks premium, but it's still comfortable. Now, if we're looking at our competitors that may do athletic clothes and we say, hey, we want to beat them, we want to be better than them, that's going to lead us towards the wrong direction, because we need to be the best for our business, not the best for make the best product for a different business. So I think that's very similar to what you're saying, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I understand if you're in a world where the scoreboard matters. And the reason why I did the video is because I spent those 35 years around athletes and coaches, and for them, if you're not hyper competitive, you're a loser, right? And the highest compliment they can place somebody is, hey, he's the most competitive guy I've ever met. He hates to lose at anything. Okay, I understand the mentality. I don't judge it. I'm just kind of glad that in my world, a scoreboard doesn't define success, or I make sure that it doesn't. And I am not competitive against other people in my field. I don't look and say, oh, what's Joe Buck doing? What's Nance doing? What's Tirico doing? And I got to listen to them. I got to be better than that. That doesn't even occur to me. I think, but I'm not saying if you're in sales, if you're in law, if you're one of these other professions where you're expected to better other people, I'm not judging it. I'm just glad, because I think I read some research, and I was really glad when I was kind of going over stuff for this little video, that non-hyper competitive people, or people have an attitude kind of the way you're describing, are healthier, less stressed, happier, because you're not defined by comparison to someone else.
Totally.
Right. And your happiness and your ego are not attached to an outcome. And I understand that sports, it's all about the outcome. And I sit there covering it, and it's sort of weird to be out of step with it. But I had to sort of confess the other day that I felt out of step with that sometimes, because that's just not how I want to live my life.
There's a saying, the thief of joy is comparison. I think that's so true. When you're comparing to other people, it can just steal all your joy and happiness, because you're always wanting to be like this other person. Yeah, I love that. How have you, over 27 years in the game, you look and feel, and you've stayed so young in a way. Like how have you stayed so fit, and it's always on the road? It's incredible with your schedule. I'm sure is more busy than almost any other profession in America.
Well, thank you. I try. I mean, longevity is really important to me, and the way to that, I think, is fitness. I mean, I view working out and fitness is just wellness, part of an overall wellness thing. And, listen, I mean, I had a lot of years where I didn't take care of my body very well. I worked out, but there was no science behind it. There was no intent or purpose behind it, or at least not much. There was way too much drinking, overeating, partying. I mean, listen, I was young. I did all that stuff. Then it sort of like you realize that that wasn't as important in the overall picture for me as just being healthy, and as we get older, we learn certain lessons about prudence and conservation, and you pick your spots, right? But yeah, I am 59, 60 in August, and I can honestly tell you that in some ways I am stronger now than I was. It's hard to say cardiovascularly fitter. It's hard to be fitter because I've always climbed mountains and cycled and done stuff like that, but by God, I hadn't slipped that much. I'm damn proud of that. The good thing is, guys, that I actually love the process. So it never feels like a chore to go to the gym or get on the bike or do something physical or active. I mean, yeah, you got to get yourself going. We all lack inspiration in certain days, right, in the moment, but I never lack motivation. Motivation I consider to be more meta, and I'm always highly motivated because I just like doing it. And it's a mental health component for me. You know, some people think that going on a vacation and unplugging and laying on a chair at a beach, that's cool, but that isn't what I choose to do. I try to be much more active, and that makes me more relaxed to go out and do something. So I feel lucky that way, because I do see people, and I admire them, who are in the gym grinding, who hate every minute of it. But I think, oh, you're spending a good chunk of your life doing stuff you hate. Isn't that too bad?
Yeah. No, it's inspiring. And as fans of your work, certainly we've talked about it, your earlier work, but let's talk a little bit about your podcast. We're fans of it. It's exciting.
Oh, thank you.
The myriad of folks that you've had on there so far, talking about wellness, happiness, fulfillment. What was the motivation to start that? I think, but you talked about it a little bit, but.
Yeah, I think, just to explore stuff outside of sports. It's really not fundamentally a sports podcast. ESPN has nothing to do with it, doesn't distribute it. So I'm really not allowed to do a pure topical sports podcast, where if I had that this week, we'd be talking about the NBA finals or the Stanley Cup or something like that. And I don't do that, but I have lots of guests on who have a background in sports, either colleagues in sports broadcasting, athletes or former athletes. We've had, people who I consider friends, like Charles Barkley on, and Lance Armstrong, and a lot of other folks who aren't quite that famous, but are certainly a lot of fun, and plenty of commentators on. So, but I actually love the other parts of it too. Sometimes I just think, you guys know this. I mean, doing this, here's somebody who's interesting to talk to. I can learn a lot from them through the research and the interview. The interview, the part we're doing right now, for me, is just a blast. There is work to be done afterward to edit it. My wife, Jennifer, is my co-executive producer. We don't make a dime on this, I should tell you. It's just a passion project and a creative outlet. I'm not opposed to monetizing it. We just haven't really prioritized that at this point. But, it's nice. And you get used to the scale of a podcast versus a TV show, right? Like you do the numbers of listens. Oh, like that's it. like the least watched thing I've ever done on television is exponentially more than the biggest podcast we've ever done. But that's not really the point. It's I love tequila. We did an episode on tequila with the CEO of Casa Dragones, which is a brand that I love, and she's a great story as a female entrepreneur. And we did an episode on bourbon, because I also like bourbon, with Pappy's grandson. So it's topics like that, and it's not just drinking. I mean, those are two examples I pulled. But we've done plenty of podcasts on, like you said, mental health, choosing the right path to go to college or not go to college. Maybe if it's not a good fit for you, veterans issues, and those are really gratifying, guys, because as you know, when you do something that has a little bit of a social responsibility tone, it really is gratifying for people to say, I really needed to hear Dan Patrick talk about his struggles with mental health, and he trusted me and really confided in me, and people got so much out of that episode that makes you feel good. That's really, I can't say that we have altruistic motives, episode after episode, but it's fun when you do something like that does connect with people. Yeah,
certainly. One of the ones listening to earlier was Stephen A, and you were talking to Stephen A about getting knocked down and how to get back up, and what that mindset's like.
Most people didn't know Stephen A. They didn't know the backstory. So I don't you guys like that? I mean, everybody knows he's loud. Nobody really knew like what shaped him, like how he came to be the way he is, and how resilient he had to be. So the podcast lends itself to that kind of stuff, that longer form answer. And I had a good time. I had never had a conversation with Stephen A. other than, hey, how you doing? That was some fight or what a game. We had never talked, no pre-interview, nothing, until we rolled on that episode. That's kind of fun. It's a very cool experience.
What was the craziest point from you after when listening to Stephen A? What really stood out to you most from that interview?
That he was a college journalism student who was a kind of a very marginal college basketball player, this skinny kid from New York. And he played for a legendary coach, Clarence Big House Gaines, an NCAA guy I actually covered way back when I did college basketball years and years ago. So here's Stephen A. on the team, writing for the school newspaper, writes a story calling for the coach's resignation. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
I mean, the dude's a legend. He's a Hall of Famer. He won 800 games in his career. He's the most important person on campus. And Stephen A. thought that he did it out of love, and he told him ahead of time, I'm going to do this. And the guy says, I am retired. Screw you, but go ahead and write it. And he did. They wanted to kick him out of school. They wanted to kick his ass out of school for writing this article. And the coach came to his rescue and said, no. He came to me. He wants to be a journalist. Let him do it. Let him stay. But I thought, like, who would have the audacity to do that? Someone who goes and becomes Stephen A. and defies all the odds and doesn't care what he says and whose ego gets bruised. That was born way back in college. I thought that was just a great story. I've never heard of anything like that.
Yeah, I've always been a Stephen A. Fan, and he some of his takes I'm always like 50-50
Yeah.
agree with, but I love the energy he brings.
I didn't want to see. That's the thing. I didn't want to talk about his takes. I didn't want Stephen A. on Kyrie. I don't want Stephen A. on James Harden. I wasn't interested in that. He does that, every day on ESPN. So I wanted to that's what's fun about this. You kind of get beneath, and you can ask him about stuff that shaped him and formed him. And he had a battle with COVID. He rang in 2021 in a hospital,
Wow.
like damn near on a ventilator with a very serious COVID that nobody really knew about. So he talked about a lot of stuff, and I think that's what's neat about a podcast. Matthew Mcconaughey is kind of a friend of mine, and I didn't get him on there and ask about, hey, let's go movie by movie.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him about his 12-day solo trip down the Amazon, where he had this purge, this literal physical purge, and this epiphany, and figured out how he could reconcile his career in Hollywood. And he wrote about it in his book, but it's just kind of fun to have a lot of time for someone who's a great storyteller like he is to kind of spool out these stories. And that's why we do it.
Mm-hmm. Over the years, speaking of headspace, and how do you get into the right mindset going into your busiest and most stressful environments?
I try to find the flow state, right? Like all of us do. And that has different meanings for different people. But what's, I think, universal about it is that's a great place to operate from, whatever it is you're doing, especially something that involves a performance. And for me, the flow state is what I call relaxed intensity. And you can't do it without being relaxed. You can't be nervous and uptight and do this really well, but you also have to be focused. And that, to me, comes from the intensity. So the relaxed intensity for me sort of is flow state, and the sweet spot between boredom and anxiety. That when you're in there and you figure out ways after this many years of doing it to get into that state through the routines you have as the week progresses, as you count down to kickoff or a Wimbledon final or something like that. And that's what's really gratifying, is that's where experience comes into play. Not just what you're seeing on the field or the court, but knowing how to prep, and then knowing when to stop prepping, because looking at those stats for another hour will not help you as much as stepping away and going for a walk or meditating or going for a workout, because ultimately what I do is judged in the moment, right? I don't care how well prepared you are. If you choke in a broadcast, nobody gives a shit how well prepared you were. It's just, can you deliver when the light is on? Can you, in some ways it's like athletics, but it's also like a big business presentation or anything that involves these intense moments where you're expected to deliver something, and you are sort of defined in the minds of a lot of people, including your bosses, by how well you do that. So flow state is a beautiful thing. I'm grateful that I've been able to sort of find that easier and easier as I've done this for a long time.
Yeah.
Was there a moment you blew on TV, you had a major gaffe, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I blew it, ESPN's going to fire me, and then you kind of were able to get in flow state, and you ended up having a great second appearance? Or what was the biggest kind of choke on TV you had?
We've all made mistakes. I mean, listen, I mean, I do think that I don't really have dreams that I remember, but I do have a recurring nightmare about once a month where I'm not ready to go on camera. Like I'm not in front of the camera in the studio when the show starts, and that will get you fired. I did one time show up late for an Australian Open match because I was wrong about the start time of the match. And I was down there BSing with somebody in the press restaurant. I realized the players were walking on court, and I'm pounding on the elevator button because we had to go up to the top of the arena to get to the commentary booth. And fortunately, someone else, the great Dick Enberg, who was a mentor of mine, he was in charge of bringing the show on the air and throwing to me. So he did a nice job covering. Nobody knew at home. My fellow commentators knew. And I wasn't going to get fired for that, but I sure as hell embarrassed the hell out of myself. But no, I think that you get to any point, no matter what your job is, where it's not about mistake avoidance, but it's about excelling and just sort of reaching the next level and constant improvement and growth. When what you do is like, geez, I don't want to screw up. And that's we're all like that when we do something new, right? It's challenging. I don't care what it is, but it's a crucial corner to turn. And I do remember a period in my career where I had been doing SportsCenter for a while, or I've been doing the live basketball studio wraps, which are unscripted. There's no teleprompter for that. And maybe even in the early days of Game Day, where, geez, just get through one segment at a time and don't screw up. Well, that's really no way to do a great show, right? You don't go out as an actor and go, geez, don't blow a line, don't blow a line, don't blow a line, don't screw. You can't. You'd see right through that as an audience member, and you have to get past that and just let it go and be confident enough that it isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's just about doing your best and raising the level.
Yeah. That's there's a time to execute, right? There's a time for vision, a time for strategy, but when the time comes, being able to execute, being able to be free, and being able to trust yourself. I think it's something that we certainly share with the sports world, and is something that you're definitely all over.
No, thanks. Yeah, that's perfectly said. Ultimately, we all have to deliver, and no one really cares what you put into it. That's expected. That's a given, right? Your preparation is a given. You guys don't show up and do something. You're going to be prepared. If you've gotten where you've gotten, that's just a given. But then that doesn't make a great broadcast. That doesn't make a great call in the moment when Georgia's winning a national championship for the first time in 42 years. It doesn't matter how long you've studied. It doesn't matter how many games you've done. If you're not able to be in a headspace where I'm not going to get all mystical and say like the universe speaks through you, but you have to be in that space where it just comes to you and you're not fighting and clawing and groping for what to say. It just happens for you. And anybody that does this, I've had a million conversations with guys who I really respect, who are the best at what they do. And that sort of is a common theme.
Yeah. With your profession, more than most, I can imagine it is a lot of, you really have to be in that flow state, because in that scenario where, Georgia's winning the national championship, or it's a walk-off home run, or there's some type of split decision where you got to react to, you really have to be in the moment, fully in the moment, to capture what the audience is feeling to the fullest extent. What are those?
We don't get it right every time, by the way. There's plenty of times when did I blow the call? No, it's good. But I will look back, and I'm pretty tough on myself. We'll say, you know what, one more line after that would have been better, or one less sentence would have been better. So that's all part of it. I've learned not to beat myself up about that when I don't love what I did. But it sure is nice when you listen back and you go, you know what? I wouldn't change anything. I nailed that. Yeah. I like that one.
I like it. Is there a favorite call you're like, print that? I like that.
It's funny. I mean, I think that there's been various tennis calls, because I've been really lucky to, and there's probably a lot fewer people out there that would be interested in hearing about tennis than football. But doing Wimbledon, the U.S. Open, the Australian Open, the French Open, I got a chance to do all the majors at one point. Now we just do 3 of them. But being able to document Wimbledon finals when Federer wins, or Nadal wins, or Serena wins, or Djokovic wins, or there's some shocking upset and somebody you never thought He's standing there with the trophy. You know, you don't plan out in advance what you're going to say in those moments. If you do, and it is done, I've heard it done by announcers, it just doesn't sound right. I mean, you always have these production meetings like the morning of a big Wimbledon final, and inevitably, like one of the coordinating producers will say, "What are you going to say if Serena wins?" I don't know. It hasn't. I mean, I would try to have in my mind the meaning of what she's doing. Is it her first win in a while? Is she going for the Grand Slam? Context is important. There's nothing wrong with planning the context of what the athlete's trying to accomplish, but scripting it out never works. So, and there's been a few. I will say that I mean, the most recent football game when Georgia did beat Alabama, it was kind of wasn't a walk-off touchdown, but it was a pick six to seal it.
Yeah.
And I was pretty proud of how we set up that last drive and what this third down play meant for Bryce Young. And then a guy who's won the Heisman and had a brilliant season makes a terrible throw, and Keely Ringo picks it up and runs it back. And you know, I'm such a student of the art and science of doing this that I will draw on other stuff. And I think I love soccer. So I watch a lot of soccer commentators who do it brilliantly. And if you can follow up, you know, touchdown Georgia, I didn't say it that way, with something afterward, which is what a great soccer commentator will do. He won't just announce the goal, which sometimes come out of the blue because there's so few scored in the game and they might be a shocking, sudden moment. Yelling goal is one thing, but having the perfect line to say after that punctuates it, that frames it, that lets people know the meaning of that goal that just happened and maybe what makes it stand out. That has to come to you in the moment. You cannot script or plan that. So I think that I was able to get out, you know, after Ringo's pick six, and Georgia's going to conquer the Crimson Tide. And then that was sort of like they were going to win a national championship. That was big.
Great.
But the fact that it did it against Alabama was exponentially bigger for their fans because the Tide had broken their heart, as any fan knows, many times over the years, including an overtime championship game just 4 years earlier that I had called when, you know, Devontae Smith made that catch in overtime. So just to be able to, I was very pleased that just kind of came out. And then I have a bunch of friends who are Georgia fans, a lot of them who are in the building, completely shit-faced after the game. But then they would go back and watch it. And just like a lot of regular folks who watch it say, you know what, I played that 100 times and I get goosebumps every time. And that's where it's a privilege, guys, because I don't make the play. I don't do anything except talk about it. So the play is the thing. But when you get to lay your words over top of it, and then that play is so great, that moment is so big that becomes a part of the sport's history, and your words are just there, you know, embellishing it as part of it. And that's pretty damn cool. You know, Keith Jackson, Brett Musburger, so many guys that came before me in the role of calling championship games. I mentioned Dick Enberg in tennis. So many people that have had the chance to capture these championship moments. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's such a privilege, and every one of them, I'm sure, feels really, you know, deeply grateful and does admit letting their ego get caught up in it a little bit when you hear it back again and again as just a piece of the history of that sport.
Yeah, most recent one was truly amazing of how, you really are part of history. You're setting the tone right after the big moment and laying the importance of it. I think the way you described that was, I wouldn't have thought of that originally when I've heard a million calls, but now I'm excited to watch you next time when there's a big moment. I'm going to be waiting.
Well, I mean, the fun thing is, like I said, in tennis, you do. I've called matches that are like 5 hours. Okay, so these things unfold. These marathon matches unfold. The ebb and flow and the emotions. And so when it's finally over, obviously it's about the player celebrating. It's about laying out and not smothering the moment. And that's what tennis commentary is. Period. It's sometimes having like 8 things go through your mind during a long point. Like what would be the right thing to say after this point? And then sometimes the right thing is to say nothing. the end of the point. So it's those decisions in the split second that really kind of define what a good call is or isn't. And when it's one of those moments at the end when Serena's done something, or Roger, Rafa, I mean, God, then we're all kind of just fans. You have to maintain neutrality and make sure you're not viewing it through the lens of that one person exclusively. But I will say, when you do a big Federer match, sometimes a Nadal match, a Serena match, 90% of our audience wants that player to win. So you're not acting like the home team announcer for Team Fed, but you understand that the story is Federer wins or Federer loses, and that's the way it goes. But the sports are so different to call. They're really very different, tennis and college football. But that's what I love about it, the challenge of doing two really different sports.
I love that. What now with NIL and the athletes getting paid, and what's your impact? We like to talk about the business of sports as well as, do you think that's a positive impact on the game, or what's your take on college athletes getting paid?
It's complicated. I think that athletes sharing in the amazing revenues of the sport is long overdue. I have no problem with that. Like most well-meaning reforms, though, it's the unintended consequences that are the problem. And NIL has lots of unintended consequences. The transfer portal does too. You combine those two, and as you guys know, you have a brand new landscape for the sport. It's very problematic to a lot of people. And for a lot of people might erode, for them at least, what was some of the joy of the sport, rooting for the front of the jersey, the traditions. And clearly, athletes of this generation, I have done a lot of thought, and I've asked much smarter people about this than me to unravel the psychology of the Gen Z athlete to help me gain a better understanding of it. And when they explain modern times to me and the landscape these athletes grew up in, it's far easier to understand why rosters are so fluid, why these athletes, for a lot of older people, lack resilience and loyalty and team spirit, and they're too damn selfish and they're not tough enough. All those labels get thrown out, I think, very unfairly, but because for a lot of these young athletes, they've been recruited to showcase their skills in AAU, in youth football. Certainly, they bounced around to different high schools. I'm going to go over here because this offense suits my skill set and will get me a scholarship. And they did it in AAU basketball. You might live in this part of town and play way over there because that's the best chance to get noticed and get a scholarship. So that kind of transactional decision making is not new to this generation. And there's plenty of team loyalty, and they'll fight hard to win a championship, but they also want to be shown by the coaches that the same loyalty goes both ways. And when coaches are up and bolt, because they have a better financial opportunity, you can't expect players to not want to do the same. I do think this, though, as problematic as a lot of this stuff is, and, we're going to have to get used to buying players, because until they get some NIL tweaks or provisions in place, it is the Wild West. And in the Wild West, there's no sheriff in town, right? It's just like chaos.
It's almost uncapped salary caps for college sports in a way.
Except some of these schools have no salary cap. What happens? That's really the problem in college football right now, is that there's less parity in college football in any sport except maybe Formula One racing, which I'm also a fan. But it's almost like F1. If you watch a race, there's like 4 cars that can win. There's basically 2 teams that are competing at the top, Red Bull and Ferrari. If you're not in one of those cars, you're going to have a hell of a hard time winning. In college football, if you're not in the top 5 or 6 schools, in terms of resources committed, it's really hard to win a championship. And that's a problem. That's a problem when college football is competing against the NFL, where teams go from worst to first in a division routinely now. It happens every year because the schedules are set up that way. The draft is set up to be, as you guys know, it's got a socialist system, right? To each according to their need. Well, college football is just like more money for the richest programs. And they will find a way to make NIL work for them, the portal work for them. And that just increases the gap between the ultra rich and everybody else. And that's a problem. God, I hate that aspect of the sport, but there's not much I can do about it. When it's all said and done, this is a really long answer, but it covers some different bases. What happens on the field is still a blast. So all that stuff, how the rosters got built, where this guy came from, what his NIL deal does, is irrelevant to me once they kick it off and I get to describe the action, because then college football to me is as great as it ever was.
But you would hope that LSU, Alabama, and Georgia for the next 15 years, it would be, hopefully there's more winners and more people that can play in the playoffs.
Well, A&M's trying to get by their way into that equation. They haven't had the success on the field yet, but it's only a matter of time when you assemble that many top 300 recruits. 24 of them in 1 year is incredible. That was the whole Saban Jimbo Fisher spat. But you add to that group, Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma's been there. Let's see if they can continue that with Lincoln Riley. Can USC jump in there? Michigan's been close. Notre Dame's gotten the playoff. But there's a group of about, and Cincinnati can have a great year. I don't want to hear about, but what about Cincinnati? Yeah, phenomenal year. Everything aligned. They got into the playoff and they had zero chance to win the championship, in my opinion. I mean, it was just clear that they were not quite in that league. And so the number of teams who can make the bracket and then win 2 playoff games. I mean, what do you got? What do you think the number of teams? Let's look ahead to this year. How many teams are capable of winning the national championship in 2022?
I mean, it's the same 4 that we always talk about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, maybe SC can get in that conversation. Michigan was certainly in the playoff bracket, and they weren't nearly good enough to beat Georgia, but on another night, had things gone their way. But could they have beaten Georgia and then beaten Bama? Yeah. I mean, it's not a very big number. That's the point.
Yeah, I feel like the transfer portal is out of control. It's like guys are half a year, and then sometimes before they even finish their red shirt, they're gone, and then by their senior year, they bounce around the three schools, and it's free agency. It's definitely hard to get used to.
I think there's some good, but I think there's a lot they need to work on, and hopefully they understand that.
Yeah, I mean, we just had like unrestricted free agency of Jordan Addison, who's a great receiver for Pittsburgh, and it was unrestricted free agency. He can go wherever he wants, shop around. NIL, SC made the big offer to get all the smoke early, but he didn't commit right away. He Pittsburgh tried to match the offer. Well, that's just exactly what free agency is in pro sports.
Yeah.
And, in the end, he made a good deal for himself, and I hope it works out. But again, to a lot of people, that's certainly distasteful.
Yeah. You got to think Oregon's going to get good with Phil Nye getting older and wanting to see them win a title. If I was him, being a founder of a business, I would say, all right, let's go get the top 50 recruits. I'll pay him.
It's time.
Pay him whatever it takes.
Well, I mean, having Nike behind you has helped Oregon, sustain success. Hasn't helped them, win the ultimate championship yet. But I mean, they've been in there swinging. I mean, it's not for lack of trying. If you could combine that with an area that also has a bunch of homegrown talent within, say, 100 miles, which Oregon definitely doesn't, it's damn near miraculous for a program like that to be excellent over a period of time. All the other programs who have been can draw from a recruiting hotbed right near their campus. For a while there, Oregon and Oregon State were both good at the same time. That's almost impossible to do. I mean, there's like, I don't know what it is. I'm throwing a number out there, but it's not too far off. 8 or 10 guys who are even capable of playing Power 5 football who come out of those high schools in that state every year. So obviously they've gone to California, Texas, and a lot of places. You got to be a national brand, which they are, but it's hard to do that year after year.
Yeah, me and Sean are from the Pacific Northwest, and I think when we went to a large high school, and maybe 1 or 2 guys played D1.
Yeah,
a year.
Yeah. Just not the hotbed like it is in California or Texas or Florida.
I mean, it can be done. And UW has certainly gone and gotten players as Oregon did, but it's hard every year when Georgia is a national brand, as is Clemson and Bama, And they also have a bunch of dudes like right around there. They don't have to convince their mom and dad to go, 3 time zones away.
And now they can give you $1 million to come do the same thing.
Yeah. Or more. Honestly, I think it's going to get more.
Yeah.
I think it's going to get more over the next couple of years. So we like to do some rapid fire questions. Quick answers. 1-word answers. You ready for it?
Yeah, I'll guzzle my coffee. One word, as you can tell, is hard for me, but I'll do my best.
Or one sentence.
Yeah.
Favorite game you've ever covered? Year and date.
Favorite football game: Rose Bowl, USC, Penn State, Saquon versus Juju.
Oh wow,
that was fantastic
in the Rose Bowl. Yeah,
highest scoring Rose Bowl ever at that point. And second might be the Rose Bowl between Oklahoma and Georgia. That was the playoff game. The Georgia won in OT.
Yeah.
Wow.
The Rose Bowl is awesome. Rose Bowl is hard to beat for me as in terms of a venue.
What was the worst game you've ever covered or event?
Oh my God. You're saying game, not tennis match, because I've called
or
a
match.
Million awful tennis. I mean, there's so many. The worst is when a championship event fizzles and it's like 6-love, 6-1. Ohio State, right? I'd say the worst game ever was Arizona hosting UCLA in Tucson. It was 100 degrees. It was the worst blowout. The fans left. Kirk and I quit on the game. It's something we swore we would never do again. It was miserable. And we learned how to tap dance in a blowout and never quit, no matter how ugly the game gets. And that was an important lesson to learn because we have a lot of ugly games.
Your research probably didn't go far enough because they were playing, the guys that never really play.
Research. We're talking about like what tequila we're going to drink after the game and where can we get a taco after this ridiculous blowout. But yeah.
Prediction for next year in college football. Who's winning it?
God, it's boring to say Alabama. They have the fuel from coming short, and they have Bryce Young, and Georgia's got a lot of folks to replace. I mean, honestly, I'd love to give you a more creative answer, but if you're asking me my pick, I mean, it's Alabama going in for sure.
So then who would be the dark horse?
I mean, SC would be a fun dark horse because I'd like to have a team out of the West be playoff relevant. And I think, coach quarterback combination, we know that works. Their schedule is certainly more manageable than running the gauntlet in the SEC. A&M becomes a dark horse because they're young. But obviously, that would be one sort of outside. They've never made the playoffs. So that would be one and neither is SC. So that'd be fun to have different blood in the playoff.
You can't argue with that. What's your favorite cuts item you've ever gotten? Color and style.
I like your hoodies, but I honestly, I mean, it's just like this flawless T-shirt that I have in a nice dark green. I think it's called Bonsai, this color. It's weird. Here, look at this. Like, this is not to like hype your brand. These just arrived today. I'm not doing this. I sort of I didn't plan this. I didn't plan the delivery on the same day as the podcast. It just worked out that way. So
I love it.
The nice thing is about ordering and knowing the size until no one's going to be perfect is that when you have these footholds in different places, and we're lucky enough to be able to do kind of a triangle between Miami Beach, New York, and Colorado, that you need lots of high quality cuts T-shirts so that you never have to pack when you travel between the places. So
Pima cotton.
I just like this Pima cotton, or I like the Pica Pro too. I mean, it's just your basic classic cut.
I love it. Yeah, really, your life is what we designed it for, where you're in the airport, you're on the go, but it's wrinkle free and it's just going to look good, but it's not going to be too informal. So we love it. Last thing, NBA finals, it's game one's coming up. Who do you got and how many games?
I'm going to pick Golden State. I just went to every Miami Celtics game down in Miami. And I knew Boston was the better team and it would be a better finals if they got in, although I was rooting for the Heat, of course. But I think they're back-to-back Game 7 series. I think they're a little banged up. Warriors should be fresher. It just seems like the Warriors' year. I'll say Golden State in 6. I know that the Celtics have given them a lot of trouble, much more than most teams in the Kurt era, and they have their bigs, and they can affect Golden State by kind of unleashing Williams and Horford, and obviously in Jalen and Tatum, you got 2 superstar scorers. So I like the Celtics. I mean, they're digging deep, but I do think Golden State's fresher, and I think they're gonna have enough.
One more Stephen A. take. If Curry wins this Finals MVP, KD or Steph on all-time rank?
I mean, but that is like the top of the list. You're saying between those 2 guys?
If Steph wins a title and MVP, who's higher on the all-time rank of best players ever?
Man, you come with a hard question. I mean, I guess if I'm going to be like Stephen A., I'm supposed to pound the table and give an emphatic answer that cannot be countered. There is no other opinion. Yeah. But that's why I'm a terrible hot takes guy. That's why I would never get hired to be one of those shows, because I'm going to sit, I'm going to think, I'm going to weigh. NBA, I'll say Steph for sure. But I like USA basketball, and the fact that Kevin Durant carried the U.S. to a gold medal, Tokyo, and has been a part of what I think he's won 3 gold medals, right? I mean, he's just been such a fixture for the U.S. international team. To me, that counts for a lot. And but I mean, Steph's the greatest shooter ever. KD was one of the greatest scorers ever. I mean, they're right. It's neck and neck, but
yeah.
I mean, people act like Steph's never been a Finals MVP. Like that's some mark on his resume.
Yeah, I have always thought that too. He changes the game by being out there.
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah, he changed the game. I'm not sure he changed it for the better. I mean, the number of threes that are jacked up in an average NBA game, and players can't shoot anywhere near as good as Steph. So it can get pretty ugly. Like I'm watching a game. I saw the Heat shoot 7 from 45.
Yeah, games
from deep. Game was Game 5 at home. Like 7 for freaking 45. They missed 38 3-pointers. Like, how do you do that? How do you keep jacking them? I mean, I know they were behind. I get that, but anyway. But if everybody could shoot like Curry, it wouldn't bother me. But I think there's way too much 3-point emphasis, unfortunately, in the league now, and there's no turning that back, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, this has been an awesome hour to hang and get to know you. Jordan, who manages our, sending shirts out. We want to. Next time you're in Miami, you need some, or you're in New York, let us know. We'll get your favorite.
That's right. That's kind, man. I don't do this. I'm never comfortable asking for free stuff, and you don't have to do that, because I'm very happy to.
You're part of the family.
Pay the more than reasonable price for a high quality shirt. So, but that's kind offer. I mean, it's as I said, authenticity is important, and I'm an authentic fan. So you guys keep doing what you do, and I appreciate it. And also keep pushing the envelope. I love the new stuff too. I mean, I gave the easy answer because this is what I wear, but I'm always, checking out the texts and the emails to see what you guys have come up with and how you're moving into different areas. I like the polos. I like the Henleys. I mean, I have a lot of different stuff besides the classic tees. But if you're asking me, because I'm sitting here in warm weather, this is what I'm wearing right now. So keep doing what you're doing. I'm a fan.
Love it. Well, that's a wrap for episode 7, and couldn't be more stoked to get to know you.
Likewise, guys. Hope we connect sometime in person.